Unable to stand that I was happier than her, my sister did everything she could to tear my family apart, but I will never forgive her. Jealous sister begged for forgiveness after she paid my obsessive ex to crash my baby shower and claimed the baby was his. Now our parents don't want to see her anymore. Hi, so I, 28F, recently had a baby shower and it didn't turn out the way that I had expected it to, which is why I am here right now. So for context, I have an older sister, Rebecca, 32F, and she's kind of been the golden child all her life. She was kind of great at everything growing up, academically or even otherwise. She was that one kid who excelled in everything that she did, and everybody else got compared to her, including me. My parents always used her to set the standard for me, and it was a lot of pressure. I'm not gonna lie, because I don't think I was cut out for the same kind of things that she had already done. I was not bad when it came to academics, but I was not really good at certain subjects like science, and just because of that, my parents thought I was dumb or whatever. They never said it to me, but I could see that they were disappointed that I was not like my sister. Anyway, my sister went to medical school and I decided to get a degree in business because that's what my eventual goal was, and I had absolutely no interest in doing whatever my sister did. Rebecca also had a pretty big head, and that's why we never really got along since the sibling gravity was too intense. She was very arrogant and egoistic, and I always felt like even if I was good at something, she would not be able to stand it. For instance, I was a great dancer, and I still am, but she didn't like that because that was one thing that she was not good at, and every time I achieved something, she would make a face and try to make the day all about herself as well, as if it was not enough that every other day was about her as well. Anyway, our parents tried to treat us equally and make it seem like it was all I knew, deep down, that they were more proud of my sister than me. We had a lot of problems growing up, but we sort of started being civil to each other once we moved out and after high school ended. We have mainly just tried to be cordial with each other. We meet during the holidays and stuff. I know that she still doesn't like me, and honestly, it's the same with me for her, but anyway, it doesn't matter to me that much anymore. But I guess it still matters to her a lot because she still can't stand not being the center of attention at every given moment. She is still an overachiever, but I guess the only thing that I have surpassed her in is when it comes to relationships. Honestly, I didn't even think it was something that we were competing in interpersonal relationships. Well, quite personal. I don't think that is something that I consider an achievement. I guess she's not cool with the fact that I am married and on the way to having my first child, even though I'm younger than her. My husband, Rick, 30M, and I have been together for almost 3 years now. We got married 1 year ago, and just 2 or 3 months after our wedding, we got to know that we were pregnant. We were thrilled, naturally, and announced it just a few weeks after that. My parents were very happy for me, and I honestly have a good relationship with them now. And we had spoken about certain things after I had graduated from college, and I had let them know that my childhood had not been a particularly easy one, no matter how hard they tried to cover it up. That they had always used my sister as an example to set the standard for me, and it had put me under an immense amount of pressure, which I communicated with them after I had graduated from college, and they actually apologized to me. So they said that they were sorry for treating me that way, and that they hadn't even realized that they were making unfair comparisons. So they told me that they loved both of us equally and promised me that they would try to make it up to me and be better parents. I did not know what to think about it back then after we had that conversation, but they've genuinely tried to be there for me after that, and ever since then. So we have had a good relationship. So I don't have any bad blood, and everything that happened in my childhood, I've put it in the past. They even tried to patch things up between Rebecca and me, but Rebecca made it very clear that she was not interested in having a good relationship with me. So I told him to give up on that because we were too old anyway. And honestly, Rebecca was not the kind of person that I wanted to be friends with. She always has been too full of herself, and even now she is quite arrogant, and the only thing that she likes talking about is herself and her own achievements. I'm really glad that she's doing well in life, but I don't want to constantly hear about it because it's just exhausting after one point. Especially when I know, for a fact, that I can be happy for her achievements, in spite of our equation, but she can never be happy for me, and she has proven it. She had a selfie face at my engagement, the same kind of behavior at my wedding. She was not happy for me when I announced my pregnancy, and at my baby shower, she crossed every single line possible and tried to sabotage it in such a way that I don't think anybody in their right mind would be able to forgive her, and she's lucky that I did not press charges against her and my ex, which is who she had brought along as an uninvited and unwanted +1 to the baby shower. So certain things about my ex, Kurt, he and I do not get along in the slightest. I hate him, and I don't think I will ever forgive him in my entire life because he was the most toxic and abusive person that I have ever had the misfortune of knowing. And everybody in my family knows about that, how terrible our relationship was, and how much I had to struggle to get out of that phase of my life. He and I got together in my first year of college, and we continued to have an on and off relationship for the next 4 years. I had to end eventually because I found out that he had been cheating on me, but he was not ready to let me go, so he kept trying to talk to me. He even started talking to me at one point and only stopped when I told him that I would report him to the cops if he didn't. He kept talking crap about me to all my friends, even though he insisted that he still loved me and wanted me back. Even while we were dating, we kept breaking up because of his behavior. He was always a little suspicious of me, and every time that he would see me talking to somebody else or going out to places without him, He would accuse me of cheating or not being as invested in the relationship as he was. But then, I was very easy to manipulate back then because I was desperate to be loved, and when he apologized to me, he would make sure that he laid it on extra thick so I would buy it. So when things were good, you always made sure that things were so great that I would never be able to forget about it, and he would bring that up whenever we fought. However, things were bad. Well, they were so bad that I would end up crying for days, and I think I was pretty depressed for those 4 years of my life. My self-esteem and self-worth were absolutely shadowed, and I felt like I would never be able to move on from this because I just kept going back to him again and again. People in my family knew about this because I had introduced him to them after 1 year of dating, but then we kept breaking up and stuff, and I had confided in my parents about this. I had even told a few of my cousins, who happened to be close to me. My other relatives, I'm not sure if they knew about it in detail, but they had a clue, including Rebecca. However, I'm sure about one thing. Even if they did not know how toxic our relationship was and how abusive he was to me, everybody knew that our breakup had been terrible. And in spite of that, Rebecca went out of her way to bring him to the party. I'm just lucky that I had known about it right from the beginning, because a couple of weeks ago, when I had been telling my parents that I was planning to host a baby shower, I started hearing from a couple of my friends that my sister had been asking around about my ex. She had been stupid enough to ask my close friends about what Kurt had been up to, and she tried to pass it off like it was just out of curiosity. But I knew that something was off. So just to be on the safe side, I decided not to invite her when it was time to send out the invitations, and even spoke to my husband and my parents about it, and I explained the situation to them. My parents were not entirely happy with this decision, but they respected it. However, she was still able to find out when I was having my baby shower and was having it. Probably speaking to some other relatives who had been invited, since I hadn't exactly briefed people not to talk to her about this, and that was my mistake. Anyway, on the day of my baby shower, a couple of days ago, everything was going smoothly, but then about an hour after the event had started, Kurt showed up at my house. I was shocked to see him, and since this was an event that I was having at my house, there was no security, so he just walked up to the door and nobody really thought twice before opening it, even though we do have an intercom. The thing about him had just slipped my mind, and I just opened the door and he walked in with a bunch of papers and he handed them over to Rick as soon as he had walked in. I was so confused, I literally froze because I hadn't seen him ever since we had broken up and I did not know how to react. In the meantime, as soon as he had handed those papers over to Rick, he was also trying to recover from the shock of all of this happening, and Kurt just announced that he had been having an affair with me for the past 6 months, and he was kind of short that the baby was his because the date of conception matched with all the dates that we had been getting together. So now he was here to demand his right as a father. And when the baby was born, if the paternity test proved that the baby was his, he would be getting partial custody as well. He accused me of avoiding him for the past couple of weeks and not having an answer for him, even though he had said that he wanted to be a part of the baby's life. And then he told me that he did not want to do things this way. But I was the one who had forced his hand, apparently. Then he walked out of our house, leaving us all in shock because, obviously, none of the things that he had accused me of were true in the slightest. After that, it was completely chaotic because I had a breakdown because I was afraid of what people might say after that. Even though I knew that it was not the truth, Rick knew, and so did my parents. Luckily, nobody believed a word of anything that had been said, and even the papers, which were just printouts of alleged conversations that we had had, which were all fake, that Kurt had left with Rick, were all kept aside. And everybody came to my side to comfort me because I was crying so hard. I don't really remember much of what happened after that, only that I was crying a lot, and I couldn't even speak to anybody, so I had to go to my room to calm down, and I ended up crying myself to sleep because when I woke up, it was almost midnight and everybody had left already. Rick was the one who filled me in on what had happened after I went to my room and told me that the guests had had their meals already since it was lunchtime, and nobody really stayed for long and just kind of left after that whole fiasco. I was very embarrassed, and the first thing that I did after hearing what had happened to Rick was to write a text to apologize to everyone for what had happened. And then I thought about confronting the person that I had a clue was responsible for all of this. I knew that Rebecca might have had something to do with this, but then it occurred to me that if I asked her straight up if she had a hand in any of this, she would obviously decline it and then blow it out of proportion and make it seem like I had something against her. So I decided to play it smart, and after a conversation with Rick, the two of us decided that we were going to speak to Kurt directly and try to get to the bottom of what was going on because we were sure that somebody underst have put him up to this. I knew that Kurt had been in love with me and whatever, but for the past couple of years, after I had made it very clear on social media that I was serious about Rick, he had stopped trying to talk to me and had not even been speaking to my friends about me like he would in the past. After so many years of being completely it was very unnatural for him to resurface and then show up with all these lies in order to ruin my reputation and my relationship with my husband. Somebody had to be involved, and I was pretty sure that it was Rebecca, but because I could not get it out of her, I decided to talk to him instead. I unblocked him everywhere and tried my luck, not knowing what to expect. I'm just thankful that he was still a sucker, and as soon as I texted him online, he replied to it. I did not say much. I had just asked him why he would do such a thing, and I told him that I had always loved him in the past, but I would never have expected him to try to do something like this and pull off a stunt that would ruin my reputation, especially when I was pregnant. I told him that I had always had a soft spot for him, and I never would have done this to him if I were in his place. I knew that speaking to him this way would make him feel bad about what he did because I knew how he was. And just as I had suspected, he replied to me instantly and told me that he was really sorry about what he had done. He hadn't been thinking and whatever Rebecca had asked him to. I pretended to be shocked and said that I did not believe him because I knew that my sister would never do something like this. So then, he actually sent me proof of his conversations with Rebecca, and apparently she had actually paid him a sum of money to pull off this stunt at my baby shower on purpose to ruin it. As soon as I had those screenshots, I blocked Kurt again, even though he had sent me saying that he had never meant to hurt me and that he was still in love with me. He was trying to tell me that he was just pissed off that I was married and having a baby with another man when he knew that I was meant to be with him, which is why he had even agreed to do with him. Rebecca had asked him to in the first place. But I did not care about any of that. I had the screenshots, and then I immediately sent them to my parents and told them what really happened. It was pretty late at night, but even then, as soon as my parents received those messages, they called me up. All of us were pretty shocked that she would actually go out of her way to pay somebody to do something so weird and shocking. But anyway, when my parents called me up, I told them that after this, I didn't think I could be on good terms with Rebecca anymore or even be civilized around her, and I made it very clear that now they could either pick her or me, and it was a choice that they absolutely had to make. They did not even need to think about it. They just told me that they would choose me in a heartbeat. Because of what Rebecca had done, it was completely unfair, and she needed to learn a lesson. I was satisfied with that answer, so we did not discuss it further. And obviously, I had blocked her anyway, so I didn't need to worry about her. For a few days, everything was calm, but then, this morning, she showed up at my door and she was hysterical. I did not open the door to her because I knew she was going to create trouble for me, and I was home alone, so I just let her wail outside. She kept crying about the ultimatum that I had given my parents, and apparently she had been trying to get in touch with them but had found her still locked. So she had tried to contact them by showing up at her place, but they had refused to let her in, and had said they did not even want to see her face after what she had done. So they told her all about the ultimatum that I had given my parents, and they had chosen me, so she knew about it. So they had told her to go away, and instead of just going home, she had come straight to my place to beg me to fix this, and was apologizing profusely. But I told her that this was not in my hands anymore, and she had dug her own grave, so now she had to lie in it. And then I told her to go away as well, but she just kept crying until I threatened to call the cops on her. However, a few hours have passed now, and I kind of feel bad about what happened. I don't know if it's the pregnancy hormones, but I just feel guilty about it. Ida for making my parents choose between my sister and me. Update 1. So, thank you so much for all the supportive comments. I guess it was the hormones after all, because it has been 2 days and I really feel differently about the situation now. I guess I was just taking it all on myself because I was feeling very stressed out due to the way she was crying at my doorstep. I was not used to that, so I started feeling guilty, just like any other human being would. Anyway, I've spoken to my parents and they told me that she has not tried to get in touch with them so far after they told her about the ultimatum and the choice that they had made. Once again, while we were talking, they apologized to me for everything that had happened in the past. And they said that it was their own fault that she was acting like this because the bar had been set too high. And she was not used to not being the center of attention all the time, which is why she was acting crazy. There was also the fact that she had been through a really bad breakup around the time that I announced my pregnancy, which I was not aware of. Her boyfriend of almost 2 years had dumped her because he wanted to work in another state and she wanted to try the long-distance thing. But her boyfriend had refused and broken up with her because it was too much work. So she was naturally devastated, and it explained a lot of things, like why she was so bitter that I was doing so well in my life when it came to relationships. Honestly, like I had said in my original post, I had never competed in these things. Career-wise and in academics maybe, but I just did not ever see the point of competing when it came to how well we were doing in our love lives, because that would just be unhealthy and toxic, even more so than the competition that we already had going on between ourselves. Anyway, after getting to know all of this from my parents, I did have a bit of sympathy for her. But then I remembered that she had literally paid my abusive ex-boyfriend to show up at my baby shower and accuse me of cheating on my husband with him. I mean, that was just straight up psychotic, and I'm sorry, but I don't think any breakup, no matter how bad it is, can excuse behavior like that. So I think it's perfectly fair for me to ask my parents not to speak to her again if they want to have contact with me. My parents also told me that even if I had not given them that ultimatum, they still would have stopped talking to her because the way she had been acting was just not acceptable. They told me that when she had shown up at their doorstep and they had told her that they did not want to speak to her, she had not been crying as with me. When she visited me, she was devastated and was crying a lot, but before that, with them, she had just been very angry and had been screaming at them at the top of her lungs. She had basically been accusing them of treating her like she was a loser, just because she was not married and did not have a baby yet, and constantly acting like they were disappointed in her, and she could see that. Even though I don't think my parents were acting like that, they were still pretty proud of her because honestly she was a doctor. It did not matter to them if she was married or not, and they were not so narrow-minded either. My parents were just proud of me for different things, and it was completely fine, but she had just assumed that just because my parents were proud of me, she was no longer going to be in the limelight. And that's what had pissed her off so badly, because she believed that just because they were treating me well, it meant that they no longer loved her, and she was not the golden child anymore. That was kind of my parents because they had treated her differently in my childhood, so it had an unrealistic expectation from everybody. Anyway, she had actually acknowledged and admitted to these things, saying that she believed that my being treated well was a sign that they were less proud of her now, just because I got knocked up. Those exact words that she had used, and that was the limit for my parents, after which they had told her to go away, and then she had come to me. Once my parents had discussed all of this with me, we came to the realization that all of us had done the right thing. And now I really don't feel guilty anymore. Because obviously paying my ex-boyfriend to pull off a stand like that at my baby shower just to harass me while I was pregnant because she was jealous of me was not acceptable in the slightest. And then she was not even sorry about it until she realized that our parents were not going to speak to her. And if it took her that much to feel sorry about her actions, I don't really think she was genuinely sorry anyway. So the bottom line is that she has been cut off from the family, and we are even going to tell relatives that if they speak to her, they better not speak to me because I just don't want any drama anymore. Update 2. Hey, so last week, Rebecca had shown up at my door and was trying to apologize to me, and that's when I made that post. After that, she did not really talk to us because we had made it very clear to her that we did not want anything to do with her. We had even spoken to a bunch of our relatives and had said that she was not going to be invited to any of our events, and we would prefer that she not be invited to any other family events in the future either, at least until I was fine with whatever had happened. And I had even explained my reasons and told everyone the truth about what she had done and why my ex-boyfriend had shown up at my baby shower that day. Everyone was pretty scandalized and agreed to not keep in touch with her, and that was that. So since then, nobody had heard from her, but today my husband called me up while he was at work. And that's pretty unusual since Rick is very devoted to his work and he's quite a busy man. So he doesn't really call when he's at work, and I know that he's usually caught up, so I don't call either. But today, he called me in the middle of the day, and I was pretty concerned, so when I answered, I knew that something had happened. He told me that Rebecca had apparently shown up at his workplace to speak to him, and was refusing to leave, even though he had told the receptionist that he did not want to see her right now. However, she was just sitting in the lobby and refusing to go away, so now it was becoming very embarrassing for him. He told me to do something because he had an important meeting with a client coming up, and so I decided to unblock her and speak to her, just to get her out of there. I also happened to know the receptionist at his office, and I texted her, saying that if she doesn't leave after the phone call with me, they should just call security and have her escorted out. She does not deserve special treatment just because she is related to me, and she should be treated just as anybody else in her position would have been. So I tried to speak to her on the phone and explain to her that what she was doing was very embarrassing for all of us as a family, and it reflected poorly on her as well. So she needed to get out of there because she was not entitled to disturb my husband at his workplace since he was not even involved in any of this. This was between me and her and the rest of our family, and he had nothing to do with any of that. But she refused, saying that she believed that my husband would be able to make me see sense. And then we had a bit of an argument, after which I realized that it was pointless to try and speak to her. She was just too stubborn. So I told the receptionist at my husband's office to have him escorted out, and eventually, that's what had to be done because she was just refusing to get out and was throwing a tantrum in the lobby and demanding to see. Even when she had that he was in a meeting several times. She's just lucky that she did not get arrested because of us. We might hate her, but we don't want her to get arrested. But that would fix her, I think. Anyway, that's what happened today, and I'm honestly so sick of this. Update 3. A lot of people in the comment section suggested that we get a restraining order against her, and I really think that's good advice. So Rick and I have spoken to a lawyer, and in a couple of days, we are going to file for a protective order against Rebecca, and hopefully it is going to come through. I have also spoken to my parents about it, and they think that it's the right move, especially after what happened with Rick at his workplace. If she's willing to go to such levels, there's no telling what she might do next, and with a restraining order, we might not be able to guarantee that she will never show up around us or try to endanger us again. But at least we will have the safety of knowing that if she tries to do anything, we can just have her arrested, and that might scare her off.